Why is Swedenborg so different? You're saying a lot of people have had spiritual experiences.
A lot.
But in the case of Emanuel Swedenborg is unlike anything, maybe in history. What sets it apart?
To my mind, and I am a fan, I have to admit that, but to my mind, Swedenborg's being a scientist is really a crucial element of this. And he's a particular type of scientist, which is interesting. You have a lot of scientists who do experimental science, which is awesome, to make discoveries and so on. Then you have people like Einstein who do thought experiments. You know, a lot of is about thinking about things that other people have already discovered and contemplating what could make that be the case. And Swedenborg was more of the thought experiment type of scientist. And he'd published a number of works. He was well known as a scientist. And he loved to, he had this tremendous ability to focus. He could think about the same thing for ages. Most of us, if you think about something and you're not getting an answer pretty quickly, it's like, oh, just think about something else. But he could sit there and bore a hole in it with his mind. He had this like laser mind, and so he would keep after things. And I think that really made him different. And when he goes into the spiritual world, he's able to kind of look at it with a objectivity, even though it's affecting his own heart and emotions as he's going through it. But he's got this kind of separation of the mind that I think is extraordinary.
And he had so much time to work with that he was having spiritual experiences for 30 years in every day. So basically straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his approach is so different. It's why you can have this most exciting thing in the world that can happen to someone, which is suddenly you can see the afterlife and you're talking to people you knew who had died and you can see heaven and hell, you meet God. And yet the books he writes are so boring in some ways because he's so insistent on approaching it with this scientific lens where he's trying to say, not just, guess what, I went and had this fun thing happen, but here's how this works. And that's what we're going to go, you're going to see that here. We're going to do like 5 or 6 scientific explanations of the afterlife. These are features of the life after death. This is how they work. This is why that world works like that. And what you find is it's like here, where here, as at first you didn't know why do apples fall off trees, but then there's this gravity that always works like it does. Why does light behave the way? There's laws about that. Everything's laws.
Yeah.
The spiritual world is governed by laws as well. And we're going to learn the secret laws of the spiritual world.
Who thinks that?
Nobody.
That's such an idea.
Nobody ever thought that. So there's a book, a great biography of Swedenborg called The Essential Swedenborg by Sig Sinisvet. And he gives the segue point in Swedenborg's life. So Swedenborg, celebrity scientist in Europe, publishing, inventing, he's ennobled, meeting with kings and queens. And then, as Sinisvet writes, Swedenborg had gone as far as he could go in attempting to explain the great questions of human existence solely through the faith into which he was born, which was reinforced by his own reasoning powers. The results of his search left him dissatisfied, but a new phase of his life opened, and the remaining years of his career must be viewed in a different perspective.
Nice.
Because you got what people call the pre-theological and then the theological, meaning he's a regular scientist, actually like getting published and being in journals, and then goes off the deep end.
Yes.
Or did he wake up to reality?
Yeah.
So here's a principle of how the spiritual world works according to Emanuel Swedenborg. This is from his book, Divine Providence. This is the science of the general space and time laws in the spiritual world.
Okay.
In the spiritual world, all union takes place by means of attentiveness. When anyone there is thinking about someone else because of a desire to talk with her or him, that other person is immediately present. They see each other face to face. The same thing happens when someone is thinking about someone else because of a loving affection. But in this case, the result is a union, while in the former case, it is only presence. This phenomenon is unique to the spiritual world. The reason is that everyone there is spiritual. It is different in the physical world, where all of us are material. In this physical world, the same thing is happening in the feelings and thoughts of our spirits. But since there is space in this world, while in the spiritual world there only seems to be space, the things that happen in the thoughts of our spirits come out in actions there.
I love that. So many things to love in there. It's like that phenomenon where you wake up in the morning and you find you're thinking about somebody and that you never think about and you haven't thought about for ages, and then they call you or you run into them that day.
Okay.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that happens. And fascinating for him to, I think a lot of near-death experiences have this kind of idea. I saw something and I was fascinated. I went over there, in the near-death experience. And I'm trying not to cast any shade on anybody else, but the thing about Swedenborg is he said, these are laws. This is universal. This happens for a reason. And those laws are unique to the spiritual world. They don't happen in the physical world, except in our minds and spirits. But
that's what I was going to say. Is what I love about it is he'll say, this is not totally foreign to you.
Yes, you know this at some level.
Because how close are you to your father?
Yeah.
We're talking about how emotionally close are the two of you. It's not a distance thing. Nobody would say,
You're not talking
well, he's
8
in
feet right now.
Yeah,
but
he's in San Diego, so we're not that close.
Yeah, right.
The reason why we're like that is that our spirits are already inhabiting the spiritual world. So our consciousness is already in the spiritual world and obeys those laws. And so it's just, the spiritual world is just a world that works like consciousness works.
My parents did this interesting thing with us when we were young, where this thing that I think it was called psychodrama, I can't remember, but where each member of the family would place you'd get people to physically stand up to show how far apart or close you felt. This was wild, but it's so interesting that everybody had kind of a different map of who's close and how people saw
I thought
things.
we were close. Now you're mapping out over here. Okay.
You can bring up a lot of stuff, but
there's another phenomenon that's universal in the spiritual world, and this is auras. Now,
yes, he talks a lot about auras,
and I think before it was cool. Nowadays,
I don't know. It seemed like in the 60s and 70s, everybody started talking about auras again, but no, this was hundreds of years before that.
Yes. Now it's like, I see your aura, you're glowing, but this was maybe on the fringes of some scientific thinking, but this wasn't mainstream back then. But Swedenborg asserts that, auras are a thing, and they're just a ubiquitous part of the spiritual experience. This is from his book, Divine Love and Wisdom. Reason needs to grasp how the spiritual world's sun was brought forth.
Meaning like the ball of fire in the sky.
You can look up in the sky in the spiritual world and see a sun.
Yeah.
And we need to understand how did it get there, which is very like a scientific.
Yes.
That's even though this,
sort of a cosmological thinker there.
It's the inquiry. So what's the cause of this? Inasmuch as it is not the Lord, the sun is not the Lord, but an emanation from the Lord, so something must be said about this as well. I have had many conversations with angels about this. They have told me that they grasp it clearly in their spiritual light, but that it is almost impossible for them to present it to us in our earthly light, because there is such a difference between the two kinds of light, and therefore between their thoughts and ours. Already there's something that would be confusing for people who aren't familiar with Swedenborg, because he's talking about light. What do you mean? Like they turn on a lamp or they like fluorescent bulbs versus halogens versus, what's the old one? Incandescence. So we're going to get into correspondences in a minute, but the way that you think, according to Swedenborg, Like, how do you think? Your thinking is a function of the kind of spiritual light that you're in.
Yes, that's right. And you can change that over time. Education, I think, moves people into a different situation where they have access to a different light.
So angels think differently than we do. And that's because they are in this spiritual light. That's just saying, okay, you know what? So I find myself like I'm trying to explain this in a way that people will be interested in it. Now, and I think, man, shouldn't it be more gripping or more easy? Or why is it so strange? But how do you think science teachers feel when they're trying to teach physical science?
A lot of what they have to teach is, these two particles are joined in ways that we can't understand. And there are quarks and neutrinos. And then
So the way that reality works is not intuitive, and it takes a while to grasp what it is. So that would track that spiritual reality would be the same thing. Yeah. Angels are talking to Swedenborg, and they go on. They did say, though, that it is like the aura of feelings and consequent thoughts that surrounds every angel. So the way the sun was made, again, repeating universal laws, the way the spiritual sun was made, stay with me, is similar to the way there's an aura around every angel, which an angel is just a person
all know
in the afterlife. Okay.
Well, it's interesting, isn't he, that he would say, which he often does, say, my evidence to back up this theory is something that you have not directly experienced, which is what angels look like. Most people on earth haven't seen that.
Okay, so we have this aura of feelings and consequent thoughts that surrounds every angel, through which angel's presence is established for people, both nearby and at a distance. This surrounding aura is not the actual angel, but it is derived from every part of the angel's body. Coherent substances flow from it like a river, and the emanations envelop them. These substances bordering angels' bodies, substances constantly energized by the two fountains of their life, the heart and the lungs, stir the atmospheres into their activities, and in this way establish a sense of the angel's virtual presence among others. This means that there is not a separate aura of feelings and consequent thoughts that go forth in connected fashion, even though that is what we call it, because the feelings are simply states of the forms of the mind within.
Naturally.
How are you going to sell that to someone?
Yeah, it's difficult to do, but what I love about it, the first thing I think that can be gotten out of it is just that there is an order. I feel the same way if I hear somebody who's way into astronomy talking about different things. I don't know that myself. I don't have the folders for all of that information, but I can tell that it makes perfect sense to them, and it's backed up by a lot of evidentiary, support.
That's what it's not. There's a spiritual world that has its own laws, and the laws are not arbitrary. The things are not arbitrary. It's not like you have the physical world that is obviously so structured, and I think this is what drives agnostics or atheists crazy about spiritual and religious claims, is that they just seem to be devoid of order. It's just, God just does this, or this is just like that, which is not
or
how
you can get some special exception, or something.
It's not
a system. It's not a
not
law.
what we find when you look at the world around us. But here, Swedenborg is describing, the reason that there's an aura, there's not just an aura because that feels spiritual. It's because the way an angel has a body that's a spiritual body, just like you, and something about the way they think and feel affects every part of their body, and that because of certain actions and that generates these waves that go out from them, there's a reason. It just like, why can you smell someone when they get close to you? Well, there's these particles and something, and
and I don't see people's auras or things like that. I know some people do, but you can feel these energies. To me, I remember riding on the bus and just feeling this energy. I was sideways, and there was a couple sitting to my left facing the front of the bus. And there was a man and a woman, and the guy's sphere was so in love with the woman and very protective, sort of like, don't you,
Okay.
Even from his back,
You could just feel it?
I'm just feeling this sort of, was very powerful.
Interesting.
And people do have vibes, right? There's a thing that some people say when certain people walk in the room, it's like you can't ignore them. There's a presence there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Distortion field.
And fascinating that Swedenborg is saying that for the angels, this comes through their body. You might even think, oh, well, it's an aura, and then the body is just in the middle of that. No, it's coming through their spiritual body. That's how this thing radiates, and that's certainly the truth physically, because obviously this thing is not still there when the people get off the bus.
Right. I don't see auras either, but some of our audience, I think, does. Did you know that some people have said that it looks sort of pink behind me and it kind of looks blue behind you, even though we don't have any colored lights or anything in here. It's just white light. But
how
some
does that
people,
work?
I don't know.
That's so cool. We've got the best audience.
I'm just kidding. There's pink lights back here. The angels went on to say that all angels have this kind of aura around them because the Lord does, and that the aura around the Lord is similarly derived from him. This aura is their sun, or the sun of the spiritual world.
And it reminds me of the corona. There's this weird thing about our physical sun, that the surface of the sun is not as hot as the corona. You go out a little bit, not even close. Yeah, and so you get this energy shooting out from the sun. It's just interesting that even the physical sun has those same kind of characteristics he's ascribing to God and to this sun in the spiritual world, which is kind of the corona of the invisible God behind them.
Going on, and there's a little bit more about auras and how not just people have them, but whole communities can have an aura together. I have fairly often been allowed to perceive that there is this kind of aura around an angel or spirit, and that there is a general aura around groups in community. I have also been allowed to see this aura in various guises, sometimes in heaven looking like a faint flame, and in hell like a harsh flame, sometimes in heaven looking like a delicate and bright cloud, and in hell like a dense black cloud. I have also been allowed to sense these auras as different kinds of aroma and stench. This has convinced me that everyone in heaven and everyone in hell is surrounded by an aura made up of substances distilled and separated from his or her body.
And here again, it certainly fits with our experience in this world, does it not? Where you go into some neighborhood or you travel to another country, and there can be a very different spirit there. Or even one, I talked to a person at one point who did a lot of walking. I mean, he would walk hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. And he said, very often when you cross a river, there's completely different people on one side of that river than on the other side. He just noticed over and over again by going, wow, it's a different world on this other side of the river here. And I found that interesting. And so, yeah, in some places you go, hey, these are like my people. I love this, you know? And then other places are like, I got to get out of here. This feels hostile or weird in here. I don't know what's going on.
And sort of tucked into this thing we just read is part of the explanation for why is heaven heavenish and why is hell hellish. So there's, if you think about like Dante's Inferno, that I don't know if everyone's familiar, if you had to read that for English class, but you go into hell and everything is scary and hell looking. Like,
yeah,
it's got lava and I forget exactly what's in it, but it's like if you're in a movie and you go down to hell, it looks like hell. Everything's creepy looking and decrepit, and then if you go into heaven, everything's really nice looking and it's made out of high end cool materials and the sun is shining and there's cool things happening with the water. And I'm just trying to think of the different ways it's depicted. Why would it be like that? And I think there would be an explanation from mainstream thought around heaven and hell. Well, it's just like God made heaven really great, made hell really bad. because hell is where the people he doesn't like goes, and heaven is where the people he does like go. So they're just, it's heaven and hell. But there's actually a consistent explanation, which is that heaven is just the grouping of people with certain kind of minds, and hell is the grouping of people with certain kind of minds, and the auras that go out from those minds reflect those minds. So if you have a mind that is full of hatred and vengeance and cruelty and adultery and slander and all the things to which you don't want someone to do to you, that stinks. Or that they think about if that was projected out around you. If you could see the mind of one of these serial killers or something out around them, what would it look like? What would it smell like? That really happens in afterlife, and that's what makes hell hellish. It's the minds of the people there kind of displaying. It's not God doing it. It's just a natural consequence of the emanation. Like that. Like, yeah.
To me, the role of God in that is at that level of the laws. It's like gravity. Everybody's under the same law, and the law is that, especially in the spiritual world, it's an honest world. What you are will radiate around you. You can't hide.
Yes.
Like what you love, what you think about all the time, what you live for, that radiates around you.
Oh,
so God kind of guarantees that that's the case. But then the particular stench around a particular type of evil is just a byproduct of that particular state of mind of the people who are there.
And by the way, that's a great point. And this whole heaven and hell thing is just a byproduct of the first law that we studied, which was that when you think of someone with an affection, your affection for someone and your thought towards them brings you together.
Yes.
That's how the spiritual world works. All of heaven and hell is just that. Because you have God, and the quality of God is love for the entire human race, and wants everyone to be happy, wants others to have everything. I'll give of myself to them. That's who God is. So the more that you're like that, and the more you go towards God,
you're closer
because of that universal law. And the more you're the opposite of that, the farther you go from God. When you're far enough away, that's called hell. When you're closer, that's called heaven. It's all just
and you're positioned by that actual, if it was numerical, something there'd be if you got a higher number, you're here. If a lower number, you're there.
And it's not that you can kind of traditionally think there's two separate sets of laws that govern heaven and govern hell. Heaven is just where everything is designed to make you happy. Hell is where everything is designed to punish you or make you miserable. But actually, it's the exact same law everywhere, which is you go close to what you love and you're around people who are like you.
Yeah.
That's what makes heaven heaven. That's what makes hell hell. And that God is always trying to make you as happy as you'll let him make you. Same, doing that for the people in heaven, doing that for the people in hell. People in hell are choosing this kind of destructive lifestyle, but God still in hell is like, all right, well, let's see how we can give you the happiest life, given that that's what you want to base your life around.
Mitigate this and dial that down.
Yeah. I have also noticed that an aura flows out not only from angels and spirits, but also from absolutely everything you see in that world. From trees and their fruits there, for example, from shrubs and their blossoms, from plants and grasses, even from soils and their particles. I'm thinking of near-death experiences that say everything was alive.
Alive.
In a new way. Of course, shrubs are alive, but something about even the...
Oh, no, but
there's something more alive.
They're looking at you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I could therefore see that this is a universal characteristic of things both living and lifeless, that everything is surrounded by something resembling what lies within it, and that this is constantly breathing forth. The experience of numerous scholars informs us that something like this happens in the physical world.
Yeah.
For example, an outgoing wave is constantly flowing from individuals and from every animal, also from trees, fruits, shrubs, and flowers, and even from metals and stones. The physical world gets this from the spiritual world, and the spiritual world gets it from divinity. I'm not sure what scholar scholars he's talking about there, or what school of thought that was? I know now there's like electromagnetism and those kind of waves,
right.
Heat radiation from like a person, for example.
Yeah, and also particles where if something sat in a given place in the dirt for a long time and then you took it out, there still would be things that had migrated from that out into the surrounding dirt that you could test and find out. Yeah, no, there was a concentration of something. And I think it was right here because it gets more and more as you get closer to that spot.
Smells, or it's just particles emanating.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
so it's like here, it's made by the same author.
Same author.
Okay.
That's right.
The next branch of spiritual science is the science of God as the source of everything. You probably heard that idea.
Mm-hmm.
People like to say it.
That idea has been around. Yep.
What does that mean? What are you talking about? The source of everything.
Mm-hmm.
This is again from Divine Love and Wisdom. There are three things in the Lord that are the Lord: a divine element of love, a divine element of wisdom, and a divine element of service. Okay? Those are the three characteristics of God: love, wisdom, service. These three things are made visible outside the sun of the spiritual world. The divine element of love through its warmth, the divine element of wisdom through its light, and the divine element of service through the atmospheres that enclose it. I now need to note that the third thing that emanates from the sun there is an atmosphere that serves as the vessel of warmth and light, and that it emanates from that divine aspect of the Lord that is called service.
That's amazing. I love that. And so just as... you have atmosphere, like the air conducts sound. And if you didn't have air, sound wouldn't happen in the same way.
Yep.
So there's somehow the scientist detects that there's an aura in the spiritual world that conveys this love and wisdom in a useful way. It brings it right to your door, so to speak. Brings it right to you.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, I mean, you can, according to Swedenborg, you can learn things about the nature of God correct me if I'm wrong, by looking at the sun here. Not like, don't look at it. No, don't. No. I saw this thing that was a map. I don't know if it's real. You never know if anything's real, but it was a map of searches for why do my eyes hurt on Google. And then it juxtaposed that with a map of the solar eclipse. There's the exact same thing. Like, too many people had been looking up at the sun. I don't know if that's real or not. Don't look at the sun, but if you study the sun,
think about the sun,
learn about the sun.
Yes,
that can teach you about God. Not that the sun is God. We're not going back to that, but that
there are correspondences.
There's a correspondence, which I think is another science branch we may look at today.
Yeah.
The hardest one to explain, but it's almost like everything physical is like a little reflection of, or a representation of the way spiritual things are. So if you think about the physical sun and the role it plays physically, that gives you an insight into how God does what he does spiritually. So he makes the comparison here to the love is like the warmth, and the wisdom is like the light. So Swedenborg was a gardener. He would go out and notice plants that when there's warmth and light, they grow. And those are coming out from the sun, which is, I don't know if they knew how far away it was back then, but now we know it's 93 million miles away, give or take 1/2 of 1 meter.
Changes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
From month to month.
Yeah,
too.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then there's also this atmosphere that encloses it. So I think about like the solar wind. There's blasting out from the sun everywhere. There's this solar wind. Maybe it's that, or you could just say it's like the radiating light and heat that come out, because it's not the sun itself, but it's the thing that emanates. But with God, God doesn't radiate out photons or vibrating particles of matter. God radiates out love, wisdom, and usefulness.
Yeah.
And it's like it goes from physical to concepts or emotions and thoughts. Like I was going to say human, but that's the spiritual stuff, And
it's so useful to me to think about the sun, because you can feel the sun very immediately on your skin. Even if it's a pretty cool day, if the sun is shining right on you, you can feel quite warm. Like you close your eyes, you'd think there's something right there warming you up. Yet it's 93 million miles away, and so much of that light is radiating out into empty space. It's amazing how giving the sun is. It just radiates and radiates day and night, all the billions of years, just radiating out all this light and heat. But for us, may go behind a cloud or it's dark, it's a great analogy for God in our lives, that when you realize, well, if the sun is still there, then for sure God is still there.
Yeah, the earth is inert energetically. I guess some people think there might have been a starting point for life at the hydrothermal vents. Like there's maybe a little ecosystem here or there that can eke out an existence not powered by the sun.
Yes,
but
that's
just
right.
about everything.
That's right.
And who knows?
But even they are feeding. Isn't there? There's all these materials, like dead fish fall to the bottom. Then
there's detritus there. Some of it is from, and I haven't been down there. This is just what I've heard.
Yeah.
Is from these bacteria that can feed on the compounds in that superheated water. That may form the basis of a food chain there. The point,
which heat comes from tension, if I understand it correctly, of the sun kind of pulling the earth this way and that. So you take the sun out of the equation, you still don't, even the
you
deep
gotta
thermal
be kidding
vents,
me.
you don't have it.
You got to be kidding me. Like, is that part of why the earth has a molten core?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me.
There's a tension of this constant. It's just like a relationship where this slight irritation between two people, that just keeps things warm,
Okay, so even there, the sun, let alone that the sun keeps you in the Goldilocks, like you'd be a frozen ball and nothing if gravity wasn't pulling on you, so on and so on. Okay, so it is with God. Continuing, bear in mind then that these three elements, love, wisdom, and service, are in the Lord and are the Lord. Bear in mind also that the Lord is everywhere, is in fact omnipresent. Then consider that the Son cannot make himself manifest to any angel or to us as he really is and as he is in his Son. S-U-N, for anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
It's not talking about Jesus as the S-O-N.
Right.
Which that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that's right.
This is why he makes himself manifest by means of things that can be accepted, doing so as to love in the form of warmth, as to wisdom in the form of light, and as to service in the form of an atmosphere. I don't know, that's a little bit touching there, that God makes himself manifest by means of things that can be accepted. But he cares about, like, I got to get something that you can accept.
Right, because the unknowable mystery behind everything, Swedenborg says the highest angels have no idea what that actually is. And so it's interesting that instead of talking about the sun itself or the reactions that are going on in it, he talks about the heat and light that come from it, because those are the things that affect us and make a huge difference to keep us alive.
Well, yeah, again, with the sun analogy, going up, it's not like, you know what, we could grow some really good tomatoes if we went right up to the sun.
Yeah.
Planted them right on the surface there.
Right.
Then
how much better would that be? No clouds.
Yeah, you get fried. You get fried by radiation. There's all kinds of things that you just can't handle. Your little human structure cannot handle that.
Yeah.
But the sun has, sun itself is an inert ball of matter. But if you just personify it, it's like, no, the sun gives us things that we can use, which is this light and this heat, that get to us where we are. Okay, so God cares about being accepted. What can God do to us to be accepted? I saw this post the other day on social that was like, some guy in an interview or something, and he was saying, what God is like, he's trying to, I think, distance himself a little from being religious. He's like, God is this, this mysterious thing that's beyond all this, the I am, the what is, that's what I think of as God. And there's a truth in that. which is that, yes, it's true that when you have people who have a concept of God that's super comprehensible, and they just, oh yeah, this is what God wants. He told me to do this. He tells you you could do that. There's something like, are you sure? Are you sure that's really God? That's that small and easy to comprehend.
Yeah, right.
So there is this, oh yeah, God should be this thing that's above our understanding. However, when you stop there, it's almost like there's nothing you can do with that. And what I love about what Swedenborg describes here is that, yes, there's an incomprehensible divine that's just way above your understanding.
Yeah.
However, that divine, from its incredible intelligence, accommodates itself. I don't like calling God itself, so we'll use the standard himself to you, because the plan of God is like, I'm going to make a way that you can interact with me, and you can understand a part of me. And that would be the whole Jesus discussion. It's like, here I am, I'm taking this infinity, and this is a thing you can understand and you can talk to, and it's me, but it's a version of me that I've tailored for you so that you can get what's going on. The reason the Lord manifests himself as service in the form of an atmosphere is that an atmosphere serves as a vessel for warmth and light, the way service serves as a vessel for love and wisdom.
Nice.
Yeah. I was, okay. So
because he'll even go so far as to say that if you don't have service, is the love and wisdom really real? Don't they dissipate at a certain point? Because they need to come down. And it's amazing how much those feelings can increase when you do something for somebody. You feel more of it, like it siphons more in because it becomes real at that moment of transmission. And you feel a sort of a loss if you don't get to connect with somebody. Yeah. Or you did something and it made no difference, or I don't know. Right? It doesn't feel the same.
It doesn't feel the same, isn't the same. Everything goes back to Ebenezer Scrooge in the Muppet Christmas Carol. On the day after all the stuff with the spirits happens, and he's like, can't believe he's alive, and has a chance to do good things to the people that he had been terrible to use his life and his resources to do what's good. If he just had this experience and learned the true meaning of Christmas and then didn't really do anything.
That's a great point.
That is what.
If it had no impact on the Bob Cratchit's,
Tiny Tim
Christmas meal.
That's right.
Or on Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim.
What was that all about?
Who cares? Oh, it's like I would never be referencing this movie because it's like, oh yeah, well, Scrooge feels good about himself. Nothing else. He just like sits around and lives the same life he had before. This is cool. So if you think about the atmosphere as a vessel for warmth and light. So vessel, you can think of like a blood vessel that it goes through, but also a vessel is like a container. So like a jar. Yeah, right. It's a jar. You got a jar. The atmosphere of the earth is like a jar for warmth and light because from the sun. Because when
it really does keeps
it there.
Yeah, it keeps it there.
That's why if you go into space, it's like, well, it's freezing in space. Even though you can go into space closer to the sun than we are here, and it's freezing. Because there ain't nothing to hold that warmth from the sun. So it's like a vessel from that. So it is with useful actions. Like you can have a ton of love and knowledge of how to act on that love, but if it doesn't come through into these actions, then it's freezing. It's not. There's nothing there. So I mean, that's kind of great.
Yeah,
I get that. That's
really
not incomprehensible. That's not arbitrary. That seems to make quite a lot of sense. And so the trick, the change, what he was trying to describe was that think spiritually. Can you think spiritually? So you can think physically. You can think about something gets hot, something gets bright, and that the substance is like you leave something out. You leave a piece of metal out in the sun, and it gets hot, and you pick it up. Oh, that got hot. Can you think about usefulness as being, which is just it's a human action, like you do something, you love someone. Can you think about that as being something that is receiving the energy of love, like you wanting to change this person's life, and then wisdom, here's how you would do it. And then the action there is what holds those things. And those things came from God. That God is sending out to you those three things. And it's like, if you act on these, then you're acting from me. I get it. I can understand that.
Yeah. That other great source of truth, the Grinch.
That's right.
How does the Grinch's heart get so large it doesn't fit in the frame anymore? You know, that's a result of he's had a change of heart, but then he returns all the things that he took. He slices the roast beast, he's doing things.
Think
right?
about that story. If the way the movie ended was, then the Grinch, he heard them singing down there, the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day, and he's up there on the mountain, he's got his big sled, he's got Max, he's like, I get it. They don't need toys and things to have a great Christmas. It's more about the love and stuff that they have. And even though I made them really sad with all that, like hurt them with this, they're still going to celebrate something. All right, Max, let's go back up to our hideout. And we'll just keep this stuff. Or
Do you want a tin of dog food or anything?
We'll throw it out off the edge of the mountain, and you see the Who's kind of like, they have a brave face, but they're... And the Grinch and them never reconcile.
Yeah.
Is anyone gonna that didn't test well with audiences?
Yeah,
we certainly wouldn't have 25 remakes of it.
That's right.
It's because it's tapping into it. Why? It's because that is following the pattern of the way the spiritual world works.
That's right.
As described by Swedenborg.
That's right.
Pre-Dr. Seuss.
That embodies something of that very light and heat and service that we're talking about.
The warmth and light that radiate from divinity as the sun cannot radiate in nothing, in a vacuum, but need some vessel as their medium. We call this vessel the atmosphere that surrounds the sun, takes it in its embrace and carries it to the heaven where angels are, and from there to the world where we are. This is how the Lord's presence is made manifest everywhere.
I was thinking the other day about the fact that somebody mentioned to me that photons are going at the speed of light. Obviously, I mean, they're photons, that's light.
That's circular definition.
So they go, and I believe if things travel at the speed of light, then time stops altogether. As you...
Don't give me that. I don't understand that stuff.
Time changes as you approach the speed of light. And so what this person said was that the light that leaves a sun and travels for 10 billion light years to get to the opposite end of the universe, to that photon, it takes no time at all. It's a split second because time stops. And so it kind of suggests how the divine could be present in the whole universe instantly across vast amounts of time. It's kind of a cool idea, right?
That is a cool idea. I mean, you're pulling out some real knowledge here. I feel like, and believe me,
it could be wrong knowledge.
I am so smart that barely ever do I hear anything I didn't already know. I can't think of the last time, but twice you've educated me here in this show. That whole like that? Sun pulling on the inside of the earth, and then this thing, man. And those, but those both those things you said are so theological.
Yes,
they're so theological.
Yeah, aren't they? Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, it embodies something. Who thought of this division between science and religion? It's kind of arbitrary, isn't it?
Well,
I get how they're in most parts of the world not even on speaking terms, but to Swedenborg, there's no talk about no gap. There's an absolute presence there. Science comes from God. It is a reflection of God. It's
okay. So here's my conspiracy theory.
Okay.
I think that the intent, like I could ever know, I'm sure all God's intents are so complex and eternal that what I know. But I think that God was giving us the option to have a harmonious path forward for religion and science through the Swedenborg. Meaning, to me, the more I learn about how the universe works scientifically, the more it seems to match Swedenborg's descriptions of how God is, right? That you can tell me, they discovered that these photons, to them, it's everywhere in the universe. Oh, that feels religious to me.
Right.
It's actually the tug of the sun. No, that feels religious to me, because you have a sense of the nature of how God really is. Whereas in other religious conceptions of God, sometimes that you get from a really literal reading of the Bible, it seems like, this is quite different than what science is finding. The classic example of that would, of course, be the creation of the world and the age of the earth. Right. Whereas me growing up with Swedenborg never was an issue, because he says right from the outset, the days of creation, that is a story about the creation of the humans, being born anew, basically. Yeah. We've done many shows about that.
Right.
So I think that God was trying with Swedenborg to say, hey, guess what? Everybody's science is really going great, and I get that there's this tension with the religion we've got at the moment, and I want to get those two. The two are not enemies. Let's get a way that they can follow a parallel, mutually reinforcing track. That was what was trying to happen through Swedenborg, but nobody was really interested in Swedenborg. So you had this divide continued, because I think that the most God can do is like, hey guys, do you want this? And if we say, we're not really interested in that, we want to do this other thing over here, you can't force it. You can't force it.
You're making me think about the fact that Swedenborg's father was a bishop, Lutheran bishop, well known. So the father is religious. The son doesn't want to go into the father's line of business. He goes into science, mathematics, engineering, so he swings. So the father's religion. The son goes into science and engineering, philosophy, and so on. And then at the end of his life, swings into spirituality and religion. And I don't know, it creates a cool kind of loop.
Right.
That was really able to bring those two things together in him, which is really what we're talking about in this show, isn't it?
The last sentence, this is how the Lord's presence is made manifest everywhere. You'd think, I would say, a core tenet of are you religious or are you not religious is, do you think God's here with us right now? I was watching a talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson, he'll say he's agnostic, often leans a bit atheistic. So his talk was about sort of about how religion makes you stop inquiring into things and is detrimental to science and that kind of thing. But he was saying that they did a survey. They're trying to do a survey to figure out how religious are people. And you can't say, do you go to church? Because people who are not religious can go to church. People who are religious, you don't necessarily. There's cultural reasons to go to church. So what they landed on was, do you believe there's a God that hears your prayers?
Oh.
That's the sign of, are you religious or not?
Interesting. Yeah.
And so it was something like, in the general populace, it was a high number, like 90%. Then when you get more educated, that dropped. If you get a college degree, that drops to like 60%. And then if you get an advanced degree, it drops to 4%. And if you, not to 4%, sorry, to 40%. And then if you're like one of the most Nobel Prize-y, top of the top scientists, it's only like 7% who say they believe. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying, they published this as like, whoa, look at that, top scientists, only 7% or 93% don't believe in a personal God. But he was saying, it's more interesting that 7% do.
Yes.
7% still do.
Yeah.
All this, that's a digression. That's its own thing.
Yeah.
But, and Swedenborg had plenty to say about how the more learned you become, the more susceptible you are to materialism.
And I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think he actually did put a percentage on it at some point. That he said angels had said that there was, I think it was 15%.
Oh, really?
Something in his day.
I didn't know that.
Of the sort of learned.
Yeah.
Were actual believers.
Okay.
From a heavenly perspective. I don't know if I've got that right, but
hey, that's cool. So all I'm trying to say, I told you more than I needed to about that Neil deGrasse Tyson thing because it was interesting. But that's how are you religious or not? Do you believe God can hear your prayers? Which is a variation on, is God present here?
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is a core a pillar of being religious is, do you think God exists? And really, like, do you think God's here all the time? Like, there's few people who think there's God, but God is not present right now here in this situation. By what mechanism is God present right now?
Yes.
Everything else, everything physical for sure, happens by a mechanism. By what mechanism is God present everywhere? That's what Swedenborg is giving you. This is how God is present everywhere. And they're both like, sure, God is in all space, outside of space, he'll say, but the actual, God being able to plant a flag and become present somewhere has to do with how much are all the people receiving the love and wisdom, and also there's a radiating out love and wisdom that's there to be accepted, but the more it's accepted. So there's a mechanism. That's all I'm trying to say. There's a mechanism.
Swedenborg is such a philosopher to be asking those questions. Like, for most people, to have a near-death experience, to see the sun in the spiritual world, and just, and he's thinking, I wonder what's behind that. How does that work? It's awesome.
Thank you. I want to say thanks to everybody who's donated to support the Swedenborg Foundation, the not-for-profit that puts this on. Without that, there wouldn't be any of this. If you haven't donated, or you haven't donated in a while, and you like what we're doing, click the link in the description, make a gift of any size, and you are part of this being what it is. Thanks. All right, next let's look at the science of creation itself.
Why not?
How did God make stuff? There's all this stuff. People say God created it. How did that happen? By what mechanism? This is, again, from Divine Love and Wisdom 302. There are 3 atmospheres in each world, the spiritual and the physical, distinguished from each other by vertical levels and diminishing as they move downward by horizontal levels. Since the atmospheres do diminish as they move lower, it follows that they are constantly becoming denser and less active, ultimately so dense and inactive that they are no longer atmospheres, but inert substances. And in a physical world, they become stable, like the substances on Earth that we call matter.
Straightforward.
We won't linger, because what is it? Who knows? What is first is the spiritual world's sun, and what is first relative to that sun is the divine human one, or the Lord. Since the atmospheres are those relatively early things by which the sun makes itself present in outermost things, and since those relatively early things are constantly diminishing as they work and extend themselves all the way to their limits, it follows that when their action and expansion come to rest at their limits, they become the kinds of material substance that we find on Earth, retaining from the atmospheres that gave rise to them a tendency and effort to produce useful functions.
Gosh, and everything is so useful. Like, it has struck me that you could have a parking lot, asphalt, there's trees around the edge of it, some leaves fall, fruit there, and pretty soon you have soil. It's just dirt. Like in your gutter, if you don't do your gutters often enough, there'd be a little rainforest starts in your gutters, right?
Yeah.
There's such a tendency to, like, hey, well, here's an opportunity. We could, why not? And there's not a thought of, like, look, this is a parking lot. You're half an inch deep. Yeah. Oh no, we got enough. We can do this.
So what Swedenborg is describing there is somehow there's a progression from God, he says the spiritual sun, which is sort of like the unknowable divine.
Yeah.
There's a continuous process, although he talks about vertical and horizontal levels, which are,
yes,
you got to learn them if you're going to get deep into Swedenborg.
Yeah,
basically,
right.
There's gradual or distinct degrees. So you kind of go up and up and up to the top, or there's like you're jumping levels, like you go to a different dimension. So going through both of those, from somehow you could follow the journey of material or spiritual emanation from God all the way down into where it becomes physical matter. So that is happening. Okay.
And it still retains that quality of It's there for a useful purpose. It's got that encoded in there.
That was before the cameras fired up here. We were talking a little bit about fine tuning. There's this argument. Right. If anyone's not familiar, there's an argument for the existence of God, which is often could be, people say, even people who are against the idea of God or aren't convinced by the idea of God, they'll say, look, the fine tuning thing gives me pause. There's a famous clip in a car where Christopher Hitchens, who's one of the best arguers for atheism, said like a fine tuning argument is the most difficult one. Not saying it's going to convince everyone, but and the fine tuning argument is just like, man, if anything was any different about the way that the universe is, the cosmological constant of gravitational force, the strong and weak nuclear forces, whatever, all those things.
Lambda and Q and epsilon and
if those were off just a teeny bit, nothing could exist. Nothing could exist at all. It just seems like fine tuning is a technical term that just means that out of the range of possibilities, it's very precise. It can only be in a very narrow band.
Very narrow band.
In order to have existence
Slightly
as we know it.
More.
And it's in that band, which that take it for what you
and has been for billions of years apparently. I mean, like it's just incredibly well tuned.
But one thing that doesn't enter into that argument, because why would it unless you got the idea from Swedenborg, is that the universe is extremely fine-tuned for usefulness.
Yes.
Like planet Earth, for example. It's full of metal, or it has all this metal in it. And unless I'm misunderstanding, metal came out of the core of stars when they exploded. Like gold.
It's not easy stuff to make.
So
it doesn't just sort of happen on a, fall day or something. It takes a lot to put these heavy compounds and these, not that I know a thing of what I'm talking about, but I'm told that it takes the kind of energy that's present in a dying star is what's needed to to have that tremendous pressure and heat and combination of things will sort of cook these atoms that last for untold billions of years.
If we could just get a watermark that said we don't know what we're talking about, have it in the corner, we wouldn't have to say this.
We wouldn't have to keep repeating.
It'd be so much less of a burden.
Yeah.
Okay, so metal's there. It's hard to make metal, right? Metal is so useful to human beings. The fine-tuning from usefulness argument, which we'll introduce here into the world, is that the universe seems designed in a way that things are useful to human beings. Metal is so useful to human beings. Not only when people first initially discovered it, you have your Bronze Age, Iron Age, because those metals were so useful, they allowed technology you can make them into farming implements and
shape. They're molten at one point and then hard.
And then they harden.
And it's so useful to be able to shape things.
They're tougher than wood, so they can, super useful there. Even that would be like, wow, that's pretty cool. It could be that this stuff that came out of stars a billion years ago, humans can't really do anything with it, but they can. But not only that, it turns out sitting there, and we wouldn't discover it for thousands more years, you can make video cameras and you can make spaceships, and you can conduct electricity along these metals. The stuff that metal can do is
who knew? I mean, we didn't know that.
There's so much usefulness packed in there.
Yeah.
And then how about sand? You go to the beach and there's just all this sand sitting around, and you think, well, it's just, there's a few, you can make a castle out of it, sure.
Yeah.
Little did we know that stuff is incredibly useful to human beings, because you can melt it and make glass. And glass, wow, it's something that is a barrier, but you can see through it. And just there, that changed the way dwellings were, climate control. Wow, that's amazing. And you'd think, that's incredible that glass was just sitting there waiting around in sand. However, that ain't nothing. That's barely any of the usefulness of sand, because turns out sand is silica. Like, you can make computer chips out of sand. You can make fiber optic cables out of sand. The internet was sitting in there in these substances.
It's incredible.
Those did not need to be that useful. And you can say it's because of human ingenuity, but if the things didn't have the properties, we wouldn't.
It's all about the properties.
We had to be. You would say it had to be very lucky that metals and even wood and sand and minerals, they all had the properties sitting in them that would allow, just with the intelligence we have, to go send a probe to orbit the sun, or to go outside the solar system, or to make the internet and make wireless cell phone communication and everything else we're hurtling towards. That was just sitting there in the substances that are on the earth. That's pretty useful. That's pretty useful to human beings.
I love this idea that there are these rare earths, and it's kind of old-fashioned that they're even called earths when they maybe dusts or powders, or maybe they would call them something else if they named them today. But these rare earths, and apparently you need just a small amount of these rare things, and some of them aren't actually all that rare. There's sort of a misnomer, from what I understand. But you don't need much, but you need a tiny bit in every cell phone. Like the cell phone wouldn't be a cell phone without this bizarre stuff that somebody discovered and they didn't know what to do with it. And I just think that's cool. And so what haven't we discovered? Probably a lot.
Yes.
When people discovered iron, they say, wow, this is probably the limit of what you can get out of this, but this is really great. No idea that sand was going to do all that, all these other metals.
It just seems like the materials around us were fine-tuned to be almost unlimitedly useful to human beings.
Yeah.
That we're still continuing to make advances and advances and advances. And now they're trying to do quantum computing. That it turns out the way that these little particles behave, we didn't even know they behave that way, but that may lead us in the next decade or so, as it seems to be progressing, to be able to make these computers that can do these calculations at a zillion times the speed of the supercomputers we have today. That's just sitting there in the properties of the universe. That's pretty useful. Fine-tuned for usefulness. All right, where were we? Produce useful functions. So that would be according to Swedenborg, that's an effect of this process of going out from God in creation to the outermost level. It retains the spirit of usefulness that emanates out from God.
Yeah, and I love how it comes right down into these elements, these compounds, these atoms, all the way down, so to speak, from that divine level. That life is still, those qualities are still in there.
Because of this common origin of everything in the created universe, its smaller components have a similar characteristic. That is, they go from their beginning to their limits that are in a relatively quiet state in order to come to rest and persist. In the human body, this is how the fibers develop from their first forms until they become tendons, and the fibers, together with their smaller vessels, develop from their beginnings until they become cartilage and bone, where they become stable and durable. I guess he's talking about from stem cells or something like that. It starts as something that can become something and then becomes that stable thing.
And it's, to begin with, I imagine, it's pretty gushy, I think is the technical scientific term for it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It does not have the properties of bone or cartilage or fascia and there I've exhausted my anatomical knowledge too. So we're getting
toes,
it all out here.
Toes couldn't be there.
That's right. Good. Ears. Yeah, that's right.
Because there is this kind of process from beginnings to limits for our human fibers and vessels, there is a similar procession of the states of these fibers and vessels, their states being sensations, thoughts, and feelings. Okay, these two go through a sequence from their beginnings, where they are in the light, to their limits, where they are in darkness, or from their beginnings, where they are in warmth, to their limits, where they are not. Since they have this kind of progression, there is a similar progression for love and everything involved in it, and for wisdom and everything involved in it. In short, this kind of progression is characteristic of everything in the created universe.
Yeah, and love is a great example of something when he was talking before about those different levels. Some of them are vertical and some of them are horizontal.
Yeah.
I believe what he's talking about there is that a vertical example would be it's one thing to love somebody, to have a feeling of love.
Okay.
And then giving them a physical hug. Those are on two different levels. That may inspire the hug for sure. Or you could hug somebody you don't even like, but it's Thanksgiving dinner and you sort of have to,
so good to see you.
What can you do? But but on the things on the same level would be, there's nice hugs and perfunctory hugs, or there's cold weather, warm weather.
Yep.
There's that's what he calls horizontal, where you have a scale and it's all in the same thing. You and I used to laugh about I don't know where I heard this, but that saying that there's no ratio between a basketball and the moon, and we laughed about that a lot because. No, that's exactly what there is between a basketball
yes.
and the moon. There's a ratio between them.
Yes.
It might be a big number, but those are round things that are in the physical world.
Yes.
What there's no ratio between is a basketball and love. Like, do you have more love than basketball or more basketball than,
Yes. I think that's fitting that the NBA's slogan used to be, "I love this game."
There you go.
So there's obviously Swedenborg in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's a good illustration. So apples to oranges is these vertical levels. Horizontal levels is apple to bigger apple.
Yeah.
There is nothing of absolute divinity in the material substances that make up Earth, but they are still derived from absolute divinity. On the basis of the origin of Earth as described in the preceding section, we may conclude that there is no trace of absolute divinity in the Earth's material substances. They are completely devoid of absolute divinity. There are, as already stated, boundaries and limits of the atmospheres, whose warmth lapses into cold, light into darkness, and activity into torpor. Still, by being connected with their source, the substance of the spiritual sun, they retain something that is in that sun from divinity. This was the aura that envelops the divine human one, the Lord. The material substances of earth arise from this aura by extension from the sun, by means of the atmospheres. There is no other way to describe the origin of earth from the spiritual sun by means of the atmospheres using words that issue from earthly concepts. It can be described differently using words derived from spiritual concepts, though, because these are non-spatial, and since they are non-spatial, they do not fit into any words of an earthly language. So if you're feeling a little like, what's he talking about?
Yeah.
It's like we can only roughly describe with the concepts we currently have spiritual things. Although I would say we're more equipped now in the 21st century to describe these things because we have more to compare them to and more to understand. Like his no time and space, now we can say like photons and we can say the internet and the
computer analogies
or
whatever.
We have more of an understanding of these kinds of things now than they had in the 1700s.
I love his clarity because it's easy to look out, like the distinction between the divine and the created universe. I love his clarity about that because it's easy to look out and see the magnificence of, all the galaxies in space or the beauty of the sun and the moon and the clouds and the sunset and all those things and think that is divine. And there are a lot of people over time have thought, well, the sun is divine and the moon's divine, the earth is divine, it's a living being, Gaia, different theories about that. I think what Swedenborg would say is that no, because this would be very different if it was, like your example of growing tomatoes on the sun. If the divine was, if that actually was the divine, that carbon atom or something, reality would be different than it is.
Yeah.
What it all is a vessel that can receive the divine. The same goes for us. People think, well, people are divine. We're all divine. We have that spark of the divine in us kind of idea. Well, Swedenborg would say, no, there's no real spark there, but you're a vessel that can receive it. And there's no limit to the amount that you can receive.
I think, to me, I don't have a spark of the divine, in that people, like some people will say, like the realization is that we're all God, but I'm not. I don't know how to get a hold of my anxiety. I don't know how to do a good job of being a dad or get my work done well. Like, I don't even know how to do this. I get wrapped up. Someone says something nasty to me and I can't stop going over it in my head. The answer that's going to liberate me is not I'm God, or that I can tell I'm not. I don't know what's going on. I don't know any of this stuff. However, the idea that we can receive God, because sometimes you're in this state where it's like, oh, everything's going great, everything's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not. So to me, it works much better to say, oh no, there's a constant source of love and truth that under the right conditions we can open to and join to more and more. And then we can kind of start to get this enlightenment. But the vault that's locked in, or the sort of the homepage, the server that website, that's safe and that's over there. And right. You do not have the weight of the universe on your shoulders, in that you are the ultimate power in the no. Like you're like a child, kingdom of heaven. You have become like a little child. That actually we're wholly dependent and wholly protected. That to me personally, that's a more emotionally, that fits with the data more. That fits with the data of being human more. Yeah,
that's right. It both explains how we're magnificent and how we're pathetic. I think it covers all those things. And it's kind of astounding when I think about it for a second that God was able to create so much stuff that isn't God. That's a pretty good trick.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I don't know. To make all this that is receptive of the divine, but doesn't have that burden of being, infinite, omniscient, omnipresent. It's finite.
Yeah.
It has its own identity, its own characteristics.
All right, let's move on to the bear. I feel like this is one of the harder ones to explain, but yet we must explain it. We have no choice. This is the science of correspondences. Heaven and Hell 89. The whole natural world is responsive to the spiritual world. The natural world, not just in general, but in detail. So whatever arises in the natural world, that would be like the physical world, not just nature, but
not just
everything
nature.
On this plane. So the
microphone,
the thing I keep bumping, this is a correspondence.
Yeah.
So is a tree. So whatever arises in the natural world out of the spiritual one is called, quote, something that corresponds. It needs to be realized that the natural world arises from and is sustained in being by the spiritual world, exactly the way an effect relates to its efficient cause.
Cause and effect. Astonishing statement, because Swedenborg will also say that, well, this world has its own causes and effects. You throw something or push it and it has an effect. So there's cause and effect within this world, but still, in another way of looking at it, everything that happens here is also caused by this world that is on a higher vertical level, quote unquote.
Yes.
That's discretely separate from this existence, but is a cause of it, every single thing in it.
Okay. So there's an opportunity here to see pretty directly, at least with human beings, how everything that we do is in effect caused by the spiritual world. This is Heaven and Hell 91. We can see in the human face what correspondence is like. I think this is the clearest explanation he ever gives for it. In a face that has not been taught to dissimulate, all the affections of the mind manifest themselves visibly in a natural form, as though in their very imprint, which is why we refer to the face as the index of the mind. This is our spiritual world within our natural world. Similarly, elements of our understanding are manifest in our speech, and matters of will in our physical behavior. So things that occur in the body, whether in our faces or in our speech or in our behavior, are called correspondences. So you have a spiritual world in you, which is called your consciousness. And you have thoughts and feelings and the impulses that become actions, the commands from your consciousness that become actions in your body. Like, I know I'm telling my hand to do this. Yes, you can trace those in the body. You would see neurons firing. Swedenborg knew the brain was involved in thinking, but still he asserted that that's an effect. The cause of that comes from the consciousness, which is the spiritual world, the spiritual part of you. So in a person, everything we do, the way our faces, like if we're smiling, that's the cause is the feeling of happiness, which is spiritual. The effect is the smile. All human behavior is downstream from all human consciousness, which that's the spiritual world making things happen in the physical world.
And the humans who are the least practiced at lying are little newborns. They don't know about lying yet.
Right. We'll tell them soon.
And that's right. We'll get to that. But the face is, it's so amazing to look at a newborn's face, isn't it? Like young kids in the first couple of months of life, because they're just, you can see them looking like, they're horrified because some gas pain is happening, and then they're happy or they're fascinated. And it's just all written on their face. But Swedenborg also says that you can tell that there's a distinction. So it's cause and effect, but you can't necessarily tell why somebody's smiling. Just as we talked about in the last show, didn't we, about the same action could have 10 different or 100 different reasons why you did that. Some people can be putting on a fake smile. Some people can be genuinely smiling. They're smiling because of a joke they just thought of in their head that has nothing to do with you, or they. There's various different reasons. So
there was one time.
It's not necessarily the case that you can look at somebody and say, I know exactly what's going on in your spirit right now.
Yeah.
There's a little mystery because there's a step. It's a step removed. And nevertheless, there is something in there that makes the face do that. I've heard interesting conversations between people where they say, to someone, what are you thinking? What are you going through right now? The other person says, I don't know. I'm not thinking anything. They say, well, your face is doing something. The other person says, that's just my face.
Yeah. I have one time recently where I thought that I'd really made my daughter laugh. And I was like, man, she loved that. And then she's like, oh, I was just remembering this thing from something. I don't know. Right. The genuine smile is a correspondence. Okay. But so that's a simple thing to understand. The spiritual affects the physical. But then we expand out from that. This is Heaven and Hell 106. In a word, absolutely everything in nature, from the smallest to the greatest, is a correspondence. The reason correspondences occur is that the natural world, including everything in it, arises and is sustained from the spiritual world, and both worlds come from the divine. We say that it is also sustained because everything is sustained from that from which it arose, enduring being, in fact, a perpetual arising. And since nothing can endure independently, but needs something prior, it therefore needs a first. And if it were separated from that first, it would utterly perish and disappear. So not just emotions, not just human behavior, everything else somehow is the cause is ultimately in the divine, the means is in the spiritual world, the effect ends up in the physical world.
And that even though it looks like the same microphone it was when we started the show or did the show last time, in a sense, it's being recreated right now.
Yes.
The fact that it endures is because it's being created again, in a sense. And I think the ultimate reason for that is, in our case, that we can be created anew, which is one of the purposes of the universe. because we're not just sort of existing from before, we're kind of recreated every moment. And so it gives the opportunity for change. It's amazing, given that, how persistent things can be, where there's hardly a cell in your body that's the same as it was 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And yet you still have some of the same, dietary issues or whatever it might be. It's interesting how things persist, but it does set the stage for change. Change is possible because it's all actually being created this second, in a sense.
Well, that's a bold claim by Swedenborg, that despite the appearance that everything is self-sufficiently existing.
Yeah.
And I guess this is something that people have proposed throughout certainly Christian history, that there has to be a first. And even with Aristotle or Plato, those guys are all the same.
Yeah.
Swedenborg would say that despite the appearance that this microphone is constant and self-sufficiently existing, it wouldn't matter. If God disappeared or if people, it's there. It's made out of metal. Metal just has these qualities because you leave it there and it seems to sustain itself, and it seems to not need any input to continue to be. Swedenborg has a quote that maintenance is perpetual creation, so that if God were not, I guess, in every single unit of time, down to the smallest you could ever measure and below, constantly recreating everything or rendering everything, it would disappear. And elsewhere, Swedenborg talks about that it's intentionally a function of the physical level of existence that it has these constants in it.
Yes.
That the constants are not an indication that there's not a living force behind it, but that you need to have these constants. He talks about things like cycle of the seasons, day and night cycle, physical laws, because within those constants, all these variety of events can happen. We need sort of a baseline. Whereas in the spiritual world, there's different kinds of constancy. So there, like objects and even like animals that are around, in a moment, God can create something. Like you can have, like, this is a brand new pitcher of water that's just kind of been conjured. Those things are more fluid, whereas it's like love and wisdom that are more constant. But here, things seem stable and independent, but they're not. If God wasn't doing it every second, then they'd be gone. And I do think of a video game. So a video game has underlying source code to it where it's written, but the machine has got let's say your game runs at 60 frames a second. The machine has to render those frames. That's what you're seeing on the TV. It's a little picture made every 60th of a second.
That's right.
And
it's true.
Good point. If that rendering process stopped, even though if you're playing a game, it seems like objects here. You see like there's a little rock in a field and it's just hanging out there, and it just is. If that rendering process stopped for a second, because every second the game is looking at the code and seeing where should that rock be, now have you moved the camera, here it is, that's like the way reality actually is. Like it's being constantly rendered or made by God. And if that wasn't there, it would be gone. So there's so much more we could say about correspondences, and if you're interested, that section in Heaven and Hell goes right through and explains a lot more. Let's move on to the next one, because correspondences really could be its own series of shows. Let's talk about the science of seeing into the afterlife.
Okay.
So we talk about how Swedenborg had these spiritual experiences where he saw how the afterlife works, and this is where we get all this from. Well, I'm looking around, I don't see the afterlife. I can squint my eyes and I can crane my neck and I don't see it. So why does he see it?
Why does he see it?
But yet all I see is the physical.
And some people see it, some people don't, or a lot of people don't. Or sometimes you might see something in a dream or when you're first waking up, and then in another state you don't see it,
In near-death experience, everyone, because I was in
you suddenly step into this other experience. Yeah.
I was having a surgery, and then suddenly I was outside of my body, and I could see that. Yeah. What happened there?
Yeah, and then it ended at some point.
Right.
Yeah. What's up with that?
This is from Heaven and Hell 76. We cannot see angels with our bodily eyes, only with the eyes of our spirit. because they are in the spiritual world, while everything bodily is in the natural world. Like sees like because it is of like substance. Further, the body's visual organ, the eye, is so crude that, as everyone knows, it does not even see the smaller elements of nature without a lens, much less things that are above the sphere of nature. So he's talking about like a microscope. Much less things that are above the sphere of nature, as are all the realities of the spiritual world. These can be seen by us, though, when we are released from bodily sight and the sight of our spirit is opened. This happens instantly when it pleases the Lord that we should see. And then it seems to us exactly as though we were seeing with our bodily eyes. This is how angels were seen by Abraham, Lot, Manoah, and the prophets. This is how the Lord was seen by the disciples after the resurrection. This is the same way, too, in which I have seen angels. There's a system.
That's great. There's a system.
The same way that Dr. Mary Neal saw her near-death experience. There's a system. You have a two-part being, as we've said. You've got a consciousness that's spiritual. You've got a body that's physical. Your consciousness is plugged into your body. Like, that's the input on the TV. You know, go through HDMI 1, HDMI 2. Wait, where's this
source?
thing?
Keep hitting the button.
Wait, no, it's back on there. Did you turn it on? So when HDMI 1... when we switch off that, you're no longer looking through your physical, then you have your consciousness is not just nothing without form. It has its own form to it. In fact, Swedenborg says it has its own eyes, its own made of spiritual substance.
Yeah.
And when you switch into that input, then you can see your spiritual eyes are, maybe they're closed right now, or they're looking at something you can't tell what they're looking at, but they're there. And if the input source switched, which it sounds like there's a number of circumstances that will trigger that, then you can see what's going on spiritually.
And something I think is tricky about this is that, because there are lots of people who say, oh, well, I saw, a dead loved one came in and sat on the end of the bed or things like this. Well, wait a minute, that's a physical bed. But Swedenborg says that everything that's in this world is also in the other world. And so you can be, that's the world of causes. So it has a cause of everything in this world is
right.
there. So you can be in your bedroom in the other world, which looks just like your bedroom in this world.
Right.
But there's an angel, and that's how you can tell the difference. When they go to the tomb after Jesus has died, they see angels in there. The only way you can see angels in there is that you're in the version of that tomb that's in the spiritual world. That's how you're able to see those angels in there.
Augmented reality versus virtual reality. So augmented reality goggles would...
Where it's layered onto the thing that you're seeing.
I went to Super Nintendo World in Universal Studios Orlando in Florida, and they have a Mario Kart ride. And what you do is you get in there and you put on these glasses that you can see through into the regular world, but also they project onto your eyes the other computers you're racing against and the coins you got to get and the fireballs. So it's these two worlds on top of each other. Swedenborg would sometimes have experiences where he was seeing the physical and spiritual at the same time. Sometimes when it's more like virtual reality, when he's off in the realms of heaven and doesn't have any idea what his body is
seeing.
Doesn't know where he is
in this physical space. That's right.
The final science we're going to look at today is the science of spiritual rebirth, or what is also called salvation. How does God...
Whoever put those words together?
Yeah, really. This is Divine Providence 124. At this point, I may add two secrets of angelic wisdom that will enable us to see what Divine Providence is like. The first is that the Lord never acts in any detail of our being by itself, unless he acts in all the details at once. The second is that the Lord acts from the center and the boundaries at the same time. The reason the Lord never acts in any detail of our being by itself, unless he acts in all the details at once, is that everything in us is so knit together and therefore so united in a single form that it does not act as a plurality, but as a single whole. We know that we are knit together and therefore formed in this way as far as our bodies are concerned. The human mind is also in the same kind of form and has the same kind of all-inclusive connectedness, because the human mind is a spiritual person and in fact acts as a single person. This is why our spirit the mind that is in our body, has a complete human form, so that after death, we are people just as much as we are in this world. The only difference is that we have cast off the skin that made up our body in this world.
I got a mental image of this. I was teaching this book years ago at Bernathen College, and this struck me so much. At first, it seemed like such a strange thing to say. What does it mean? The Lord's working on all of you at the same. It doesn't just work on one part and works from the outside and the inside at the same time, or boundary and the edges, or however to put that. And I got this mental image. It sort of explained to me why sometimes it seems like your prayers are not answered or not quickly.
Yeah.
What I got a picture of was a house of cards. You know what I mean? Where you take playing cards and you stack them all up, and they're very, very vulnerable to falling down and everything. And it would be like saying that you have a card. So, we think of ourselves sort of simplistically, where you think, well, I just have this bad habit. I should just get rid of, why doesn't God get rid of this bad habit for me?
Yeah.
Well, depending on how central that is to your structure, that may be in the center of your house of cards. And you may say, please, Lord, remove this from me. What the Lord does is he starts working on different cards. And you're sort of like, well, what are you doing? And he's going, push, moving around, moving around. And then years later, he's got it to the point where your whole structure is moved over. And now the card that was at the center is out on the edge with nothing leaning on it. And he can just take it away without anything else falling down. But he never deals with your one card. He deals with the whole house of cards. And that's why sometimes those prayers aren't answered very well. You're asking a big thing. I need to change everything. I can't. Yeah. And it's so great. We do things stupidly. We try to go in there and just do one thing, thinking it won't have any effect on anything else, not realizing no, it's a whole system. You can't do it that way.
Yeah, because if you just yoinked it, the cards would all fall down.
The whole thing falls down.
So
it turned out it was pretty central to who you were at that time.
Give another analogy. Let's say that like tomorrow, somebody said, tomorrow's the Broad Street Run in Philadelphia. It's 10 miles. Like, let's go run it, Curtis. I would, okay, I'm going to get injured and I'm not going to finish it. If we're trying to get to where I can run that run, it would have to be, look, you've got to have so many things have got to be changed in order to get you from where you are now to be able to run that run. So
it's not impossible.
Yep.
But it's not going to happen tomorrow.
So there's got to be certain strength in your tendons and ligaments and those things have to get hardened. So there's some training you need to do for that.
Your vascular system.
Your vascular system, you have to get your cardio better. You should change some of your diet, or maybe it's a marathon, whatever it is, that to be able to do that. There's a bunch of changes, and I think what Swedenborg is trying to say is that just like physically with the body, to be able to do something like that, there has to be changes in all kinds of systems at once. So it is with our spirits, and that you can't just make life easy, make good. Why does God take us at the track he takes us through in life, where we have the challenges we have and all that? It's because he's doing this complex action on us. In fact, that's the defining driver of how life goes for everyone, is that God is trying to reform and regenerate our spirits through life.
And there's as you say, there's a science to it. This is a lot of what Swedenborg talks about. There's a process. And everybody goes through it somewhat uniquely. Everybody has a different set of things that they're working on and so on. But there's an absolute process, and that's actually a lot of what the Bible's about inwardly, is that process. Here's the first phase, here's the second phase, and the third and the fourth, and it's a science. Just like the best runners in the world will still get scientists to study their tape and take blood work and think you could get slightly better if you actually lived at high altitude but practiced down at sea level.
Yeah.
Because then your blood oxygen uptake, et cetera, et cetera.
This is how the Lord works in the whole angelic heaven, because the whole angelic heaven is like a single person in his sight. This is also how the Lord acts on every individual angel, because every angel is a miniature heaven. This is also how he acts on each of us, most directly on our minds, and through them on everything in our bodies. This is because our mind is our spirit, an angel to the extent that it is united to the Lord, and our body is obedience.
So it seems to me like a theme of this whole show is that you could be forgiven for thinking that, well, if you're talking about angels and the afterlife and all that and things that go on in your psychology or something, like this is kind of, especially the angel part, the afterlife, it's all outside of the realm of science. I mean, it's woo woo, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work by the same. There's not laws. There's not rules.
There's no processes like the development of the fetus
sort of like,
in
well,
the womb.
you know what the fairy kingdoms. Who runs the fairy kingdom, and who,
Yeah.
you know, how does their currency work and everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same kind of thing. And here's Swedenborg saying, "I'm a scientist. I'm telling you, this is the same. We're in the same reality. We're in the outside of it here." In the physical world, we will be going to the inside of it, the spiritual world. And there are some things about the spiritual world that are different, as we talked about. But for the most, it's the same God through the whole thing. It's all an ordered system. And it's helpful to know. I can picture a future time when there be whole university departments, you know, science of correspondences wing and the science of salvation wing or something. I mean, it's cool to think about, because Swedenborg said that those were sciences in the past, and bringing those sciences back, that would be a cool outcome of Swedenborg's bother that he went to.
Yeah. This is going on to Divine Providence 125, where he gives sort of the reason why he's telling us this. These angelic secrets have been presented first to make possible an understanding of the way the Lord's divine providence works to unite us to him and him to us. This does not happen in any detail by itself, unless it is happening in everything at the same time, and it happens from our center and from our boundaries at the same time. Our center is our life's love, and our boundaries are the contents of our outward thinking. In between are the concepts of our deeper thinking, and I've already explained what these are like in evil people. Again, then, we can see that the Lord cannot work from our center and our boundaries at the same time unless he works with us. We are actually with the Lord in our most external activities. This means that in those matters where we make choices because they are within the limits of our freedom, when we do something outwardly, the Lord is working from our center and in successive stages all the way to our boundaries. So why is it, if God has all the intelligence in the world, can see and do everything, why is it in every religious tradition and do this, don't do that?
Yeah.
I think there have been some schools of thought that it's kind of like a test where God will see, like, will you follow these rules? And if you do, you're good, and so then I love you and I'll take care of you. If you don't, you're bad.
Do the magic and fix you.
But here, Swedenborg would assert that God is constantly loving everyone, always, and wanting to do good to them. He wants to change us from self-centered and materialistic, which we've become over many bad choices in the human race over a long period of time. That's a topic for another show. But he wants to change our heart, and that can only be done when we're changing our actions at the same time. Those things have to change with each other. So God says, do this, don't do that, because when we do that, when we take those actions, then that's moving the house of cards around so that he can move and change, switch out the Jenga blocks, whatever you want. You train you for the merit, like whatever you want to use for your analogy.
Yeah.
If we partner with God in doing our little actions, then he can do the hard work. If you look at it, the voluntary versus the involuntary, if I say I want to train for this marathon, what do? I go running and then I rest and I eat certain things. But as far as the actual tear and rebuilding of the muscles and the change in the blood pressure and the heart, and I don't do any of that. I don't even know that's going on.
Your VO2 max, yeah.
Whatever that even is, okay, it's happening. That's like what all the stuff God's doing inside your intellect and your will while you take the time to say, well, I'm not going to do this thing. I am going to do that thing because that's what I think is right. We have no knowledge whatever of what is at our center or what is in those successive stages from the center to our boundaries. So we have no knowledge whatever of how the Lord is at work or what he is doing there. However, since all these events constitute one coherent process all the way to the boundaries, all we need to know, is that we should abstain from evils as sins and turn to the Lord. This is the only way the Lord can set aside our life's love, which is hellish from our birth. So that would be the ego, self-centered tendency that we default toward, and transplant a love for heavenly life in its place, which would be I want to make my neighbor happy. Final number for the day. Once the Lord has transplanted a love for heavenly life in place of a love for hellish life, then he transplants desires for what is good and true in place of cravings for what is evil and false, the pleasures of impulses to do good in place of the pleasures of impulses toward what is evil and false, and the good actions of heavenly love in place of the evil actions of hellish love, eventually genuine care in place of cleverness, and wise thought processes in place of malicious ones. In this way, we are begotten anew and become new people.
It's great.
Okay. So there's a system to that. I can understand it. And that's, I guess, the explanation for why it is like it is, where you have sort of suggestion books from God. Like they'll say the word is there and it's saying, do this, don't do that. It's why you have moral lessons, but we're sitting here and it's up to us whether we take them in and do it. It's because it has to be accepted into the different layers of us. It's just like, as we said, with the voluntary versus involuntary parts of the body, there's an order and a system to how God saves human beings, changes human beings, makes us anew. And it's once you understand it a little bit better, you can be more of an effective participant in that process.
Yeah, that's right. I love that idea that there are these reaches within ourselves that are just as mysterious as deep space. We have no idea what's in there. We don't know what the Lord is doing in there. But if we do our little thing with the few Jenga blocks that we can see on the outside, the Lord does all the rest of it, and keeps this process of purification going. So everything about that we've talked about with the creation of the physical world, of the creation of the spiritual world, and the way the whole thing works, is all set up for our betterment, for our happiness and usefulness. That's the purpose behind the whole thing. And if we understand that, I think we look at the universe a little differently.
Hope you brought away a framework by which to look at the physical world and the spiritual world a little differently. Thanks everyone for hanging with us as we discuss this. Hey, the books. We've been quoting these Swedenborg books this whole time. You can get any of those books on the Swedenborg Foundation's website. There's PDFs, there's EPUBs, there's hardcovers, there's deluxe editions, and any of the proceeds from that, in addition to you getting all this spiritual wisdom, proceeds to that benefit the not-for-profit Swedenborg Foundation. Also, the book we read from at the beginning, that's The Essential Swedenborg by Sig Sinisvet. That's available on Swedenborg.com as well.
Recently re-released with new translations of all the quotes from Swedenborg.
Yeah. If you're tired of having us sit around and act like we're the experts on Swedenborg stuff and we're so great, you can outpace us pretty easily. That's here. Right. You go get in there and get that material. Thanks, Jonathan. That was so fun talking with you.
That was great, Curtis.
Thanks everybody for watching. Hope that you have a useful and spiritual week.